All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Breakthrough Podcast, the Medellin edition.
Love the name.
Is one of the many people I've worked with kind of on my come up that really just allows me to kind of live like this, right? Just kind of work wherever I want, whenever I want. I heard Marian on one of my favorite podcasts, the Bradley podcast, Dropping Bombs. And Marian, I forget exactly what it is, but you were just going in on like something technical, and I think it was Google Ads or something like that.
With Brad on the show. Yeah, I think, and he had a couple questions to try to kind of put me on the spot, but I love those. So,
It was
um,
like it was like super technical, and it was enough to where this guy knows what he's talking about, so I'm going to reach out to him. And then we worked together a couple of times, super uh all projects super successful. So I
love it,
uh,
man.
yeah, Snake, thank you for coming on and give the people an introduction.
100%. Yeah, so I'm a purebred immigrant, how I like to call myself. I moved to the US in 2013. I'm originally born and raised in Romania, Eastern Europe. So I came over, had pretty much nothing to do with the whole entrepreneurship uh, kind of genre. At that point, my whole purpose was to just try to just one to make a better living for me and my wife, and then two to offer my family, a better future. So at first, as I can probably talk in the name of most immigrants, it was just 7 days a week, work my ass off. As a matter of fact, both of us. So I had 2 to 3 jobs, 12, 13-hour days. For the first 2 years, we saved up as much as I could. At some point, so when I came over, I worked in a moving and storage company. And then the first thing that I did when I saved up some money, I said, "All right, I can do this on my own and make more money." So I bought a truck. A buddy of mine joined me, so we started together. Offering contracting jobs to a couple different stores. At first, where was a lot of fitness equipment that we were delivering, and then slowly we started getting our own jobs. I started learning a little bit about client acquisition, and then 'cause we were buying leads, and then so the first year was roughly around a 250K per year business. And then second year, what happened was I was actually having this conversation with another client of mine yesterday, 2 days ago, and it was a little bit of a blessing and a curse back in 2016. So as an immigrant, you have to go through a lot of extension of your visas and a lot of different processes in between. So my lawyer kind of fucked up the whole process. He filed two applications at the same time. Bottom line, I got a letter in the mail saying, "Well, you have to leave the country in 48 hours because the previous application was canceled." Anyway, bottom line, me and my wife, we packed things up. We left the country. This was back in 2016. I think it was February. So my business partner was here. So the fact that I left, again, it was a blessing and a curse because I could really understand. I could really look from a different view at the whole business and understand how can we grow it, how can we acquire customers better, what can we do to really kind of work on the business instead of working in it, right? Because every day I was taking phone call, I was taking sales calls. I was kind of living on the US time zone at the time. So I bought every course and every book that I found on marketing, funnels, ads, uh, everything from Google to Facebook and everything in between. So by the time that I got back, this was 7 months later. That's what it took to process my entire paperwork. and everything is, thank God it's all good. We just actually took our citizenship just 2 months ago. So, but it was a journey, right? And when I got back, the business actually grew from 250K to 1.2 million in literally 6 to 7 months. So that's how I got the taste of the entire marketing world, right? Because pretty much everything, all that growth happened from a simple landing page and two Google Ads campaigns. Like this was pretty much what it was. So then, as you can imagine, when I came back, I had a lot of friends and people that I knew in the industry of like the service-based industries in the Boston area. So a lot of people started asking me questions like, dude, what the fuck happened? Because we thought you're going to go out of business, but then actually came back and your business grew, you're almost 10x. What happened? And I started offering some free advice. I didn't even call it coaching at the time. I was not yet familiar with the whole coaching industry. So slowly, I started just giving some of these friends of mine some advice, and that's how I kind of got introduced to the whole coaching industry. And slowly, I started offering done for you services. At first, was mainly with the service-based industry like roofers, construction companies, remodeling companies, things of that nature. And then from there, kind of transition into the whole sales funnel world. And then from there, it's pretty much history. I learned about the personal branding kind of industry niche, and then started my own podcast a couple of years later. And then that's how me and you kind of got introduced, because with my podcast, I had a couple of big names as guests, and then Brad Lee asked me to go on his show, and that's how we kind of got to connect with each other.
Grant's a business rock star pretty quick. I knew you were Grant, but I didn't know you came so like kind of late in life. It sounds like when did you?
Yeah, I was 20. So this was 2013, literally 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I was already. So I'm 35 now. So I was already 24 when I came over.
All right, I told you it was gonna kind of a surprise, but I already see like a couple great stories that we can kind of zero in on for kind of like the main theme of the podcast. But before that, kind of want to rewind a little bit. I just kind of like to get like into the mindset of people, like just kind of see how you were like growing up, like maybe like adolescent to like teenage years. Did you have like a thing that you were into, like really focused on, kind of similar to how you are with business now? Did you have like a thing when you were growing up? Like for me,
so the one thing that I did my entire life growing up was one way or another I was involved in sports, not necessarily to a pro level, but I kind of jumped from one martial art to another, then kind of hitting the gym. But then on the work side of things, I always had something on the side. So I shouldn't. I don't know if the word focused is really a good way to look at it, because, and I feel like I got this from my mom. Like I remember growing up back in Romania, where I'm from, the lifestyle, like I know it might sound, and I don't want to make it sound worse than it was, but for the longest time I remember my mom used to go to a couple different countries to buy all kinds of clothes and food, and then resell it in our city. A lot of the things that the neighboring countries had, pretty much the cities that we lived in did not have access to. And we're talking everything from clothes to actual food. So seeing her kind of hustle in the hustle mode, like almost, if I remember right, she was going twice a month, either to Hungary or Turkey. Turkey was pretty well renowned for jeans and some other t-shirts brands, and then Hungary, which is really the closest neighbor, was really renowned for food and the really cheap prices for food. So a lot of the stuff was bought there, brought to our home country, and then resold there. So she was taking her with me most of the times. I would say 60, 70% of the times I was going in these trips back and forth. So I could see a lot of different things that she was doing, but mostly what really kind of hit me was the hustle mode that she was in. My dad was completely the opposite on that regard. Like he was more kind of playing poker, and a lot of other stuff. So he was not necessarily in the hustle mode. I mean, maybe he was in his own thing, but then me growing up, I kind of did the same thing. It's just I was for a while I was so I had a job as a bartender for the longest time. One, because it was fun. Two, you were obviously meeting a bunch of chicks, and three, it was allowing me to be. And actually, this happened even when I was in high school. It allowed me to make a living even as I was in high school. I could still work, Friday, Saturday nights, and things like that, and also during the summertime. So I started working at a pretty early age, but the I feel like I got more and more serious with having a side hustle most of the times. So I was saving up money as a bartender, then started buying clothes, reselling in my hometown. And then as I got a little bit older, around 18, I started, after I bought my first car, I flipped that and then just started to kind of make a little bit of money on the side with that. So I don't know if necessarily the word focused would be the right way to look at it, but I was always looking at things to do and try to kind of push myself with, all right, whatever the options were available at the time, I was trying to at least go for it and see, all right, maybe I can make it happen here, maybe I can make something happen here. So again, I don't know if necessarily the word focused was a thing, but that's kind of how I was. Yeah.
Not really just driven, but like driving.
Yeah, driven. Yeah, and I was just trying to look and cat, like I was taking this thing from my mom, I was taking this thing from from the maybe the guy next door or whatever. But yeah, driven on that regard, I feel like I was most of the times, even my younger self.
Yeah, so even in like the younger, like developing ages, it was like maybe it was a couple different things, but it was just pretty much hustling was your thing.
Yeah, I feel the one thing that really kind of kept me going even harder at was the people that I was surrounding myself with. So I think we all kind of been through this phase at some point in time. So having a bunch of buddies that the main thing that they want to do every day is just kind of party and not having necessarily a purpose to go after, and not to throw rocks at all your childhood friends. But at some point I realized, like, damn, if I keep doing this and then just stay in the same spot, because some of them were older than me, and I'm like, damn, like I don't want in a couple of years to still be here and be in the same spot. And that's when one of my best friends actually moved to US. He actually moved to Chicago. And then I remember I talked to him first time after a year or a year and a half, and he was telling me about the lifestyle and the different things. And that's how I kind of got, like, I always watched, movies growing up, and most movies were either from US or a very small portion was the Spanish ones, but most of them were obviously, from US. So I always wanted to come here. I didn't know necessarily, hey, I want to come over and move and actually build a life here. But I knew that when I'll have the first shot, I'll try to at least come over and see how it really is. And that's actually my buddy helped me with a job offer, and I lived the first 3 months in Chicago. So Chicago was the first city that I went. But I don't know if if you want to go more into some of the stories previously or
Possibly,
Which one?
possibly that might be where you want to go. We'll see. So the name, like theme of the podcast, I call it the Breakthrough Podcast.
Mhm.
I wanted to call it Level Up, but that's been taken like 5 times. So Breakthrough sounded like cool as well.
Yeah,
Have you ever read The Talent Code?
I have.
not. Who's the author?
So I shout him out a lot. It's I don't want to, I forget his name. It was one
All
of
right,
those
no problem.
books that like, just the overall idea was just so cool. Like, you don't like, I don't even know if I finished the book. It was just the overall idea was so cool. Like, I could have just read like the back of it and been like, dude, that's life changing. Like,
That's how you know the book is actually good. Like you don't even,
yeah,
if you don't remember the author, you don't even remember if you actually finished the book. But
You just read something in it, and it's
it
stuck in your mind.
resonated with me so much. Maybe because this was when I was running the recording studio. So, you know, you go through this like almost every day creating a song. And so the talent code is basically, it's literally like cellular. So he describes it as there's a point like when you're learning something that you almost get there and like you hit almost a wall and you have to like struggle through and like you break through it, right? And once you break through it, you have that breakthrough. It literally like you have what's called myelin builds around like your neurons. So like riding a bike is like that. You can see it's just you struggle so hard with it, right? And then once it
Or
clicks,
swimming, I feel.
yeah, you like can never forget how to do that. So like for me, it was like, you know, figuring out the chords on a song and like you get to a part and like, you know, like a note is just off and you can't figure it out. And so I don't know. I just like as soon as he broke that down, I'm like, man, I remember like so many times where I can like, you know, pinpoint that, right? And I think
How many?
how many years you've been running the studio?
that was that was years ago. Years ago. Like
Oh, okay.
before I got into real estate and the
Mhm.
consulting and all that stuff. But that was kind of oddly enough, that's what like made me passionate about business. You know, the music thing made me be like, man, I almost like the game of business more than like
More than
recording.
the actual.
But I just feel like that idea, it's not just like it's like you see that metaphor play out like in the gym when you're building muscle, in business, you know, relationships, everything. So
It's almost like the way that you pointed it out now. It's almost like momentum, because it's, you know, once you start on it and you get a little bit of it, as long as you know how to not lose it, like it almost propels you into the next thing, into the next thing.
And
yeah,
it keeps going.
exactly. There's always like the next thing. Once you
Mhm.
break through, then you're like, yeah, you like grow kind of, right? You can almost feel
Yeah.
the shift.
Mhm.
And that's why I like the idea of that book. It's not just mental, it's literally like down to your like neurons. They literally do like, yeah, you grow like a sheath around your neurons. You can continue like, you know, adding to it. So I kind of want to, I think you brought up like a couple good kind of periods like that. So you can go wherever you want, like
Mhm.
maybe like a earlier phase, maybe to like a point where like, you know, describe the point where like you were in that struggle phase, being like ready to be like, man, you know, fuck this, like I'm out of here. But you know, you didn't quit. And then like, you know, describe the beginning and then describe like that breakthrough moment, like after that.
Oh boy.
Probably a
I
cut. Now that
think,
you hear it break down, there's probably a bunch of them, right?
yeah, but I think the one that I really feel I learned like so many lessons, especially about kind of listening to your gut type of lessons, is it's not even the early stage. Well, in a way, like I feel every decision that we make, at the end of the day, regardless who you're asking, regardless if you have a coach that's, let's say, maybe painting the picture of what would be the road that you should take, or whatever that may be, at the end of the day, it's still your decision. So I feel like in this case, the best representation for me to kind of talk about was actually the fact that in 2016, when we had to leave, it's funny, my other client of mine that I had this conversation with 2 days ago, because I haven't really talked much about this. I don't know, for whatever reason, like for the longest time, it kind of bothered me a little bit. But I feel like that was the time. So here's what happened. When, yeah, I feel like that would be the perfect example to talk about this whole breakthrough moment. I almost knew, like, even when I hired the lawyer to help us with the extensions and all those. So what happened was at that point in time in 2016, we were in US for about 2.5 years ish. So we knew that, okay, now we have probably another 7 months to a year and a half of an available time frame to figure out what's going to happen with our paperwork moving forward. Because I don't want to go too political, but the immigration process, it's quote unquote, it needs a lot of work to to put it that way, right? Anyway, bottom line is, I was selected. So US has this thing where you can, it's called a lottery pretty much. So you, as long as you have a high school diploma and a couple other pretty basic qualifications, you can enter. And as long as your country is not on the blacklist, I get selected for that after 7 years of keep pushing every year. You only have a couple days a year when you enter. So I do that. Like the moment I learned about this was when I was 17 years old, but I could not sign up until I was 18. So I waited about a year until the first time that I was eligible to apply. So for 7 years, I apply every time. And I get selected in the worst moment because I was already here, and it's a little bit of a gray area from an immigration standpoint, because we were waiting for another application, and this was the deadline for this application to actually be able to process paperwork was so short that if the current application was not getting a positive answer, we were out of chances. But when I say we, it's me and my wife, right? So we had about 2 more months left, and we were hoping that this application that was on process is we're getting a positive answer. And I asked the lawyer, dude, are you sure it's a good idea to submit both paperworks at the same time? Because these two applications were going against each other. One was allowing my wife, because she was actually enrolled in school, to extend that period for another year and a half. And then this one was me, the main applicant, where we were pretty much applying to live forever, to be able to live and work full-time in US to get the residency. And the lawyer was, yeah, that's totally fine, no problem at all. But I was not, like, I was feeling in my gut that it just doesn't sound right. So I paid 3 other lawyers for a one-time consult, and literally every person told me a different thing. And I'm like, God damn, man, like I got 4 people. There are all of them supposedly specialists in this field, and they literally, every person is telling me a different thing. One person was telling me, no, stay here and fight it in court because it's your chance. And I'm like, yes, but it's a little bit different than the regular application for immigration standpoint, because the grounds of the application they were super clear. Like, you only have this deadline until this period of time. My guy was, of course, he wanted my money, and it was not cheap. I remember we paid back in 2016, $5K a pop, like $5K for me, $5K for my wife. So $10K was a big deal to only get the letter literally a week later saying, get out, right? So when I got that letter, I'm like, God damn, man, like, what do I do now? Like, because we have 48 hours to decide, are we staying here and, become illegal immigrants, and whatever happens next? Um, and then two, do I leave everything behind that I built in 3 years, three and a half years? Like, it was the lease of the apartment, my car, the business that was, it was a year and a half, about a year and something in. Yes, I had my business partner that could stay here and deal with the operations, but pretty much all the sales calls and all the phone calls were on me. So I'm like, damn, like, where do I, who do I listen in this case to make the decision that will, because this will affect me one way or another for the rest of my life. Because the risk was, the case was already being processed for Boston. We even received the confirmation letter in the mail for the interview 2.5 months from that point. But if I decided to leave to my home country, now that case was supposed to go back in line after all the people that had interviews before me and reschedule it in Bucharest and Romania at the embassy. And those 2 days before we got the plane ticket, I literally called this is in Kentucky. I can't remember exactly what the office is called, United States Citizenship and Immigration. So I called, and I remember that lady already knew when I was even back from Bucharest. I was calling every week, like twice, 3 times a week. Do I have an update? Do I have an update? Do I have an update? Like, is it rescheduled? Because I knew that if so. Anyway, we pack everything up. We go. This was March 2nd. We arrive in country. So, I mean, we arrived, and then from Bucharest to my hometown, it's another, I don't know, 350 miles or so, 300 miles driving. So I'm driving, and I started calling, like, all right, I need to reschedule this. Okay, you need to send an email, blah, blah, blah. I do that. I get home. I live on US time zone for those 6-7 months because I was still taking all the phone calls through a VoIP system back home. So I was waking up at roughly around 11 a.m. over there because that was 7 a.m. here was 2 p.m. there. So I was waking up, but I was waking up around right before noon, and I was going to bed around 3 a.m. Over there because that was 8 p.m. here. So all the customers were kind of gone. Anyway, so for those 7 months, it was the longest time because I knew that if I don't get the chance to get to that interview, that was it. Like my chances to ever come back, unless I was decided to just cross the border, my chances to come back were literally zero because of the letter and the applications that were going head to head. So I guess the lesson there was, 4 different people telling me 4 different things. My lawyer literally said, all right, give me 10K, I'll apply from here, you don't have to leave. But then I decide at the end of the day, doesn't matter, like I paid him, but if my when the letter came and we got denied the extension, all of a sudden it was a 2-month period that was impossible to connect with the interview. So that meant 2 months completely out of status. So my lesson there was, my gut told me from the beginning that, all right, the lawyer should not do this, should not apply for both. Even though, 2 of the lawyers said, all 4 said different things, but then 2 of them kind of had stay here and fight it in court. And then the other 2 were saying, well, you should try to apply for a different thing, try to apply for asylum. And there were other scenarios in place, but it was not possible at the time. So my lesson there was, sometimes, when you really feel that like your gut is telling you, like, dude, like this is the right thing to do, sometimes you just have to stick with it, right? Like it's, yes, I lost, the 10K. I lost a lot of like sleepless nights. I lost, the 7 months. But then when everything happened, it happened the way that it should have from the beginning. So I feel like that was my biggest. And even when I was there, I knew, all right, I'm not gonna give up. Like if I would have just waited for things to happen, I mean, that interview would have not rescheduled by itself. And not just that, but if I would have not like pushed every single day to speed it up, because I had a lot of people, like I had to go in a really long line to go, but after a lot of persistent and calls and consistently just being on top of things, the case was rescheduled like pretty much last minute. It wasn't like it was a matter of 2 weeks and that would have been over, right? So I feel like a lot of people give up a little too soon, and you were like so close to make things happen. Regardless if this has to do with maybe somebody's fitness journey, maybe somebody's I don't know, quitting their job journey into opening their own business, or maybe this maybe it can go into the whole content creation part that you try to post for a while and then you give up too soon. I mean, we've all done it. We are all guilty on that regard. But I feel like my biggest breakthrough was there, and it was having to do with the fact that I didn't give up. I stayed consistent, like literally every single day on the calls, and making sure that I was pushing through all the, not necessarily negativity, but a lot of the customer service pushback. They're like, all right, we'll let you know when this happens. And I'm like, no, fuck no. I'm not just going to sit here and wait. I'm going to keep bothering you until you're either blocking my number, and then I'm going to call from a different number and you're still going to get my call until I hear what I want. So I feel like that was my biggest thing when I was faced with really, one of the biggest decisions in my life that would have affected, and it did in a good way, right? My future shots at different things in my journey. So I feel like that was one of the biggest and the longest times that kind of I feel like the journey kind of tried to see, all right, how can you really push through all this time and stay consistent with it? So I feel like that was my biggest lesson.
A couple years ago when this happened.
How many people don't do that and don't get in, or how many people, just take the easy route. And yeah, it is tough to not get political here in that story, but it's like, that's almost like an inside glimpse into like, why are we making it so hard for like people that want to come in here and like, this guy's creating businesses, helping businesses, and we're just putting him.
It was one of those things, like that thing didn't even matter to me at that point. I was happy that I had a shot, but then also in my mind was always the thing, I hope I'm doing the right thing, and I hope doing the right thing makes sense in this case, because there's no point to hide. Yes, of course I could have just stayed and not give a fuck about the whole paperwork, and we all know probably a lot of people that would have done that. It's just I always thought, no, like I want to do the right thing and do it in a way that's the most beneficial for all people involved. Like, at the same time, I was thinking about my parents, because they, at that point, I didn't see my parents, not both me and my wife, for three years or so. So that would, having a decision of staying without caring about the whole paperwork process would have pretty much taken all the chances for my parents to ever be able to visit, right? Because if you're completely out of status and things like that, parents, like it's hard, almost impossible for them to get approved to come over. So I didn't even care, to be honest, as much about the whole political game. I was like, all right, I have a chance, and I've had the chance to try my chances here, but what do I do now? Right? Like it's which path do I choose? And um, I feel like I just trusted my gut, and that, I mean, really, that's what it was, because I lost a lot of money with lawyers that kept promising me that's gonna.
I shook my head when you said that because I'm just remembering all the like times where like I've I've learned that lesson the hard way, you know? Like
And we've all done it. It's not just you or me. I mean, we've all been at some point, and this can apply to a coach too, not necessarily just the lawyer part. Like the lawyer in this case, yeah, like your coach may not always be, and not with bad intentions necessarily, and in some cases maybe with bad intentions to just take your money, right? Like how many times, people, maybe you even probably paid for some either coaching or courses that would.
yep,
Right,
business
doing trash or whatever.
partners, like
Yeah,
people I've worked for, man.
exactly.
So that yeah, that's another like perfect example of that. So and is that something that you can draw on like when you're trying to reach like a certain goal or you're trying to get through something now, can you like you can tap into that kind of like, man, remember how tough that was? And then like also the cool part of that is for me is probably like after you got through it and you got back to the States, like how much sweeter was it that you went through the mud to get through that?
You know what I was actually, it's funny because I had this conversation with my wife. So from the time that we came over, it was always a goal. So for example, 2000. So I came first. She came second year, but it was always a goal. So I'll break it down like very shortly. But maybe a lot of people listening don't cannot really relate because people born here don't have to go through this necessarily. But when you came over, you have to wait a couple months for your social security card to arrive. So you're not able to do a lot of things until that thing arrives in your mailbox. So then the first goal was, I remember I was telling my wife, so first is to get the social. Second is you have to go and apply for a driver's license. You can move around. Like, I mean, Boston is, it's different. The transportation was better back in, I mean, not better. You could live, unless you are in the suburbs, you can live without a car, right? It's not like New York where you almost don't need a car because it's even worse to to drive it to city. But anyway, so get a driver's license. Then once you get the driver's license, then now we're focusing like every 7 months we had to pay this lawyer to extend that paperwork. So I was constantly just on the site checking the status, making sure that everything is in place. So 7 months, another 7 months, another 7 months, and then the last application took almost a year and 2 months in pending. So there was just nothing going on. So I was like, keep hitting refresh. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is it taking so long? But it was always something that was like, it was always a goal in here that was like, all right, this is the next thing. Like now we have to really be focused on this. And then once this whole thing happened, I'm like, all right, now, I mean, this is a whole different goal that we have to get. So now 7 months go by, we got the residency, we come over, we come back to the States. And pretty much what was funny, like now, finally, this was when literally when we land. So we land, we have to go through security a little bit differently now because we have to get processed in a different way, to sign some paperwork. And then once we get in, pretty much nothing else changed. Everything else, like literally from day two, everything went back to normal, like back into hustling back. It's almost like, what the, like the 7 months passed, like I lost my mind with all the calls and all the sleepless nights. And then now literally nothing changed in terms of course, that the whole situation now was so much sweeter because I could I didn't have to worry as much. Now the goal was, all right, we have to focus on these 5 years to make sure we get the citizenship. So the next goal was not 7 months anymore, was 5 years down the line, because you need to have 5 years under your belt being a resident. And of course, a couple other things like taxes and all the other, of course, not get in trouble with police or things of that nature. And then you apply for citizenship. But it took a little longer than 5 years because we had a lot of travels outside the country, because the first 3 years we could not travel out. And I'm like, now that we are allowed, let's travel the whole world for as much as we can. But it was always the next thing. It was always, all right, now we have to from this point of view, like it was always in the back of my head. Doesn't matter what I was doing with business, like in the back of my head was always, but this is the most important thing that I have to focus on to make sure that I have something to fight for, quote unquote. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense.
That was kind of like your North Star, like
Exactly.
Like it was so I remember when I got my citizenship 2 months ago, and I'm like, what next? Like I need something. I need to put something on my own. Like I got so used these 10 years. I got so used these 10 years with this. Like I need something, because if not, I get complacent.
Congrats. I honestly, I didn't even know it was like that hard.
I feel like
I didn't talk enough about this.
I guess no one does, because I've literally I mean I always figured and knew and kind of heard that it's really hard for people to become citizens, but the way you broke it down, it's just, I mean, I look at like just how annoying it is to deal with just the DMV or the IRS, just like the basics, right? So imagine like doing this and like how long it was. So man, congrats, dude. Congrats on finally getting that. You kind of brought up a perfect segue into like the next thing I wanted to talk about. Maybe you don't have it yet, but do you have, now that you know this, right? Like, having a North Star, you learn how important it is to like, break through stuff and don't quit. You've gone through that a couple times, right? You zeroed in on just that struggle, but you could have told the story of that even before then, like when you went from, just what was it, being a mover, right? And then, not just a mover, like laborer, but like running a really successful moving business, right? So,
yeah, but for
some reason, I don't know why I felt it was not important. Like I always felt.
No, it was perfect.
Yeah, I felt like the story was not necessarily important or appealing to the people, to the audience that I talk to from my podcast and from my content creation, until I shared it a few times, but very, like, I think this is the first podcast that I'm actually sharing, like, with all the details that I told you. Like, I don't think I've ever, because nobody really asked that deep into into the story.
People can take that. So I'm thinking of like, people that are maybe they're just starting like a sales job and they're cold calling for like a year, or a laborer, right? Like these are the lessons that people can learn. I think even when I was younger, like kind of had the misconception that people just got lucky. Like they look at you as like a successful coach and like, man, that guy must be like super smart. And like, he was able to just figure things out quickly. Like he's lucky. And no, it's totally not like that. He just didn't quit. So,
yeah, the lucky part, I feel like the luckiest I've ever been was when I was selected to that lottery from here from US. Was it the wrong time? I don't know if I should necessarily call it that way, but that was literally the only lottery that I ever played at, and now, I did get selected up to 7 years. But again, if I would have not signed up for 7 years in a row, who knows if I right? Nobody would have.
and didn't you say you were like following up with them as well? throughout the 7
That
years?
was after that was after they selected me. Well, when you get selected to process your paperwork. It's not like you get selected and that's it, you win or whatever. No, you get selected to process your paperwork. And then from there is your responsibility to, send all the documents and make sure you actually follow up with them to make sure that your interview is being scheduled.
I think the universe like rewards like
what you put in is what you get back.
Like luck. It looks like luck from the outside, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really.
But you kind of brought it up now that we've established, you've learned these lessons, right? You kind of understand what we're talking about. Do you what is the next thing?
I figured you'll ask me. I'll figure you'll ask me this. I feel like I've always felt this. I really played what I'm capable of at a really low level. I feel like I'm just getting started now. Like everything that I've done, the way that I look at things is this way. Like every time when I go back to my home country and I talk to, people that I grew up with, a lot of people, would say to me like, dude, like, oh my God, like you've done so much. And I'm like, you might think that way from your point of view, but I'm comparing myself to somebody that grew up there and had maybe a hard upcoming, but I compare myself with other people that are my age and they've done things like 100 times bigger than what I do. So now I'm thinking in a good way, right? Like in a motivating way. And that's how I look at things. And I'm thinking, so if all this time I was able to accomplish these little things that I was able to, imagine if I actually put my focus without having to stress out on the other stuff like paperwork and things like that, like my immigration paperwork. Imagine what I can actually do. That's what I'm having these conversations with myself pretty much, right? Like when I go to bed or before I go to bed. So I didn't necessarily put something like an exact goal or an exact thing, but I decided when after I took my citizenship, I'm like, right, let me just reorganize a little bit all the things that I'm being involved in. And I did realize, a lot of the things I might even put a lot of time into some tasks that do not actually bring me a lot of positive ROI on a short term, but they might bring me a really great ROI on long term, but maybe I don't do it enough. So for example, maybe I did not keep a really strong relationship with people that I've had on my podcast. Maybe I did not, like a lot of the things that I try to reevaluate what I could have done better in the last couple of years to even propel my business and everything that I'm doing, my brand in a way at a much bigger scale. And so those are the things that I'm kind of putting on my drawing board now and kind of try to pick and choose. I didn't put yet an exact thing as a big, let's say 3-year or 5-year goal. But that's how I look at things. I'm like, all right, now I really have to take things serious, and because I know I'm capable of. It's just a matter of now executing in the right, set of tasks, pretty much.
So still trying to figure it out, like the exact, goal or North Star, if you would. But
I do have to put some specific things. I feel like because that's how I operate the best. From even now having this conversation with you, realizing it kind of reinforced my my thoughts that actually you do need to put some specific things on that drawing board to make sure that it's something that you see it all the time, like you see it there. Like, yeah, maybe the last couple of years I did not have those things on the drawing board specifically, but they were, oh man, they were in my head like on a daily basis. Um, so I feel like I just have to really put some specific numbers in place to make sure that I can apply them. I know and I can reach them, whatever I put in there. It's just a matter of see which one is more valuable than the other. And I feel like my brand is the number one thing that I feel like I played a little too small. I could do like at least in a minimum 10 times better. Like every time when I work with clients, um, I realize like so many times it's so much easier when I do it for somebody else. If I have to design a plan or if I have to just doesn't matter what it is. Like the other day, it's funny. I was talking to my wife and I said, you know what's one thing that you've never like she does this beauty academy thing, and I said you do realize that outside of ads, you do have another world of a lot of schools that could benefit of your trainings. What if you send this? And as a matter of fact, I said to her, grab your laptop now, log into ChatGPT. ChatGPT spit an email proposal. She sends it to top 5 schools in Boston. Literally, she gets a reply in like 2 hours. Next day, she gets an invite to the school, and now we're in the process of signing a contract with the school for her to teach. And I'm like, see, like these things just come up like randomly. Um, but when it comes to my brand, I always put it at last, kind of thing. Um, so it's
It sounds like that's it. It's something related to, just blow up your brand. If you
yeah,
have
like I just have to put it on the board and then think about myself as a client without using my name and put another name on it, and then just design the plan for it.
Yeah, that's why I love these stories. Again, it's for like I always go back into like maybe like myself when I was like in the recording studio, or like I always thought that like there was a finish line, right? Like, okay, like I'm gonna make X amount of money on music and then I can chill. But it
Mhm.
doesn't stop, right? Like once you get those breakthroughs, you just realize like,
You realize that it's not just the money.
yeah, well,
You
it's
realize
like
it's something else.
all right, I can cool, I can ride a bike now, but like that kid can do a
But
wheelie.
that
That kid
motorcycle
can do a
is.
wheelie. Learn how to do a wheelie. So it's I think these types of stories are just super relatable for everybody kind of across all spectrums. So that's why I kind of like to zero in on it. And then just me personally, like understanding it has really just has helped me a lot too. So
No man,
um
you really pulled some stuff out of my
I
out
love
of
it, man.
myself
That
now.
was that was the perfect story. I like hearing that and just knowing, like I said, knowing how annoying it is to deal just with IRS, DMV, or just like the basics, anything dealing with the bureaucracy is just makes my skin crawl. So yeah, that took
Yeah,
a
and,
lot.
and at the end of the day, as bad as we make it sound, the one thing that I always thought, even going through that process, I was like, but still, instead of just sitting around and complaining that, oh, the system sucks and all that, what if I just, because at the end of the day, doesn't matter how much I would have complained that the system sucks or whatever, it came down to, are you going to do something about it and about your current situation or not? And I just if I would have just decided to sit and complain and say, well, this sucks and the system, whatever, didn't give me, like, at the end of the day, like, who cares? Like, I would have been just another number that did not meet the the criteria, whatever you want to call it. It's just a matter of like, if you're doing something about it and doing it in your way, do it or not. Just kind of shut up and move forward with it, right? Like it's
That yeah, that's
and this applies to everything.
there's always something there's always something you could do to like push the needle forward on.
Exactly.
All right, man. Before we wrap up, I'm looking for I have a couple like kind of random questions I like to ask.
Sure.
and just like almost not doesn't have to be rapid fire, but just some like
Yeah.
interesting questions to wrap up. If I kind of lost my note here, and if I did, I'm gonna freestyle it. So, what's something that you've recently changed your mind about? That maybe not recently, but even or even like something
It
that
had to do
comes up, like maybe something you had a firm belief about something and you've completely flip flop.
100%. A couple of months ago, I decided to hire a fitness coach twice a week. He helps me kind of work out differently, and the bro science that I grew up with,
Oh, man.
I realized I thought I knew everything that I could have known about working out, eating right. I always thought, oh, I don't eat trash. And to be honest, my entire life, I thought eating just chicken and rice, it's just a great, until I started counting calories and until I started implementing a couple of the workouts at the gym that I always thought, that's just like, nobody should work out like this. At the end of the day, a coach may, like, I've seen progress in the last 6 months on my body that I've never seen in my 30 or whatever. I started working out when I was 14, like actually hitting the gym when I was 14, 15. So 20 years of working out, I never, like, I'm in the best shape of my life, like at 35. So, a coach just made, I don't know, I have no words in terms of how much of an impact in just a couple, we work out twice a week together. He points out a couple things to me. And, at first it was, all right, let me see how you work out. Let me see what exercises you do. And of course, just growing up with the bro science, you work out with the bro science that you grow up with. So
Just
it was an
listening to you eat a
insane.
lot of chicken, bro. That hurt. That hit close to home because I learned that like almost the same age. Like, and same thing, working out or being athletic almost my whole life. And then like, yeah, I made the biggest gains I think when I was like 37.
Yeah. So
Imagine if we did that since we were like 21. We'd
oh
be
man, right when you were in your prime. But
and we ruined our
uh,
mini model career,
it's
man.
never, it's never, it's never too late. In my opinion, it's never too late to hire a coach in any kind of shapes of life or business, right? Like, doesn't matter what it is. Sometimes you just need a little tweak. Like, it's not the end of the world. And sometimes it's just about ego, especially in this case. Like having, go into a gym where a lot of people kind of maybe know you, or you've been working out there for a while and now you have a coach with you to just, some people just look at that and say like, oh, you're trying to show off, or now you're trying to be a fancy or whatever, you're trying to play fancy or any kind of other ways. Who cares? Like, I want to get better myself, and I do what I need to do. So that applies in business too. That applies in anything. Like, if you can, because it's not. I feel like it's not necessarily for everyone right at the beginning stages to do this. Like, sometimes you do have to go through a couple of things yourself to see where you lack. Like, what are the skills that you lack? Like, right? Like, it's, at the beginning stages, like if somebody would have told me when I was 16, hey, you have to hire a fitness coach, who would have listened? Right?
I think it I think a good time is if you are like maybe at that struggle point and you're plateau.
Exactly. Like, you realize, all right, I'm plateau. Yeah, like that's the perfect scenario. And same thing in business. Like, you realize you're at a stage where, like, I don't know what to do next to grow. Like, I feel like maybe every time when I add more customers on the plate, it's just more headaches on the delivery. Or maybe if I try to shoot more than one video a week, now I realize that I have to spend too much time editing, or because you don't have a VA that can edit, or whatever that process is in between. Um, Sometimes you just need even just a consult. Sometimes just one call, just book a call with somebody that can help you out, and that's it.
That's why I loved working with you. It's just like, no, like just click this, do that, do that.
Yeah, I remember there were just some like little things that moved the needle like crazy. Because in your case, you already had all the traffic that was coming in. It was just like small little details, small little settings, adjustments in there, and boom! Like after a couple weeks,
I learned that lesson like quick in like business and stuff, but for some reason it never clicked with fitness. So that's why I'm saying, man,
exactly like
that hit this home. Next one. What is there a like? Was there ever like a life-changing book or like interview or podcast or something that you've read or listened to really kind of like change your mindset?
I feel like so there are a couple of them, but the one that really made me understand, and also it had to do with some of the clients that I work with, and even to this day, and I'll share an example. So one of them, from a business standpoint, Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson opened up some things in my mind the first time that I read it that I did not think about, like especially concepts. I'm not talking about because of course the industry is full of like bullshit, and it's full of people that they just read the book and then now they think they can teach what's in the book type of thing, like instead of like, and they've never done anything before, right? But for example, like this is the most basic thing. I was training BJJ about 2 weeks ago, and a friend of mine who's a brown belt said that, hey, man, like we were talking at the end of the training, and he said something along the lines like, I'm looking to build a side hustle or try something, but I don't know what to do. I don't even know if I should, like, what should I talk about if I decide to go on Instagram. I'm like, dude, like I'd love to learn some of the tricks that you're doing when we train, from a jiu-jitsu perspective. Like like you have so many years of experience, you can just try and do a couple tutorials about this, and if you enjoy doing it, you can either put together maybe some type of small private classes, group classes. You can uh, charge for consults online. Like I'm happy to pay time to time a class to learn from you. So that was one thing to understand, that you don't have to have tens of years of experience in one field until you can teach it. You can just teach as long as you are a few steps ahead of someone. You can help the person to go, like let's say you are at, we're talking from a dictionary standpoint, let's say you are at letter F, taking somebody that's at A, going through B, C, D, right? So that concept was taught in the book. I don't, of course, somebody that's at Z and you are at A, you might be learning in an easy and faster way from the guy that's only five, six steps ahead of you than someone that's 30 steps ahead, right? That was something that really opened my mind in a whole different way that I ever thought about before from a business standpoint. So if we just call it one book, I feel like that concept in the book, not even the whole book, but that concept was something that really opened my mind into a whole different way when I read it a couple of years ago.
Beautiful. And I agree. I've never heard it broken down like that, but 100%. I think it's almost better. Like if you're like, say your goal is to like, all right, I need to break through and make six figures. Like I
Yeah,
think
like learning from a billionaire is gonna be hard.
Yeah, like you don't need to go learn like the billionaires. They're like walking on coals and like trying to find the meaning of life, right? Like,
but the person that's making 500,000,
yeah,
those
that's
six
what
figures,
you
it's
need to
gonna
learn
be,
from,
it's
because it
so
was
much.
like
Yeah.
2 years ago. It's fresh in his mind. He can tell
Mhm.
you like, oh yeah, like you just need to do this, this, and this.
Because
He
these
can
are
like
the things that work now. These are the things that work now to get it there. And of course, there's so many ways to do one thing. But yeah,
love it. All right, last question. And then we'll wrap up and like let the people know where to find you.
sure.
What would the title to your autobiography be?
Uncomfortable.
Love it. That was quick. Why uncomfortable? And
that's a book that I'm writing. So the title is Uncomfortable, and then the subtitle is Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. It's a
bro,
learn. It's a
that's
lesson that I learned.
why I'm doing this. I feel like once you learn that, you have to constantly put yourself in that. Man, I love it. So
Yeah, and it's my new podcast too. I already have the intro done, a couple episodes recorded, so it's my new. It's I always like I feel like marketing is a skill that I'll always and I'll forever be grateful for. But I always thought and I learned this from Evan Carmichael. He was teaching this concept of one word. Pick one word that defines you, and you can apply it to your brand. And it took me 3 years, I think, to figure out what's that one word. And I feel that the word that defines everything that I've done and everything that I was able to get done was only when I put myself in uncomfortable situations, and then I push myself to get comfortable in those situations. So that's why I know I answered like quick when you asked me, but
I don't need to think about that. It's already copywritten. Almost done. All right,
but yeah,
awesome, man. So great stories. Again, like I said, these are things that people out there could totally relate to. We probably have a ton of people out there, going through listening to business podcasts, and just want them to see like, hey, it never ends. The uncomfortable feeling, it never ends.
100%.
Thank you, thank you so much for sharing those stories, man.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah,
This was awesome.
let the people know where can they find you. Everyone remember, look for uncomfortable, plug
Yeah,
that.
so the uncomfortable, depending how soon you plan to release this episode, the uncomfortable podcast might not be live, or maybe I'm thinking we're probably looking at 2 to 3 weeks from this point on to go live on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all the other ones. But for people that are mostly interested in the business world, my podcast that's already live, it's called Brand Up. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcast, all the other ones. So, and then you can obviously go to just my website, marianvesanu.com. So MarianVesanu.com. It's the same username as my Instagram. Um, Everything is in there. All my shows, all the podcasts, all the guests that I previously had: Bradley, Grant Cardone, Pat Flynn, all the other ones, Evan Carmichael, because I mentioned him at the end. Um, and all the content that's going up, lives on my website. But Instagram is my favorite platform, especially because of the DM and the stories. And then people should expect to see a lot more things coming up, both on my IG, but mostly on my YouTube as well. And it's also under my name, just my full name.
Hey, now that we know that's your new North Star, I look forward to seeing that blow up like 10x.
100%, man. You'll see a 10x at least for the next 12 months, but I'll try to put a different North Star every year now.
Love it. All right, brother. Great talking to you.
100%, man.
Thanks so much for coming on, man.
100% every time. Thanks for having me.
Have a great one. Man.
You too, man.